What's up guys, welcome back. This is anime fiction. You'll be watching What If Naruto Fused with the Mind Stone in Marvel, Part 1. Now, let's begin. Attention. 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 Assimilation was unsuccessful. Auxiliary power source rerouting unsuccessful. What are they communicating? Successfully sustaining residual consciousness through a foreign entity. Please lower your volume for a moment. I am making an effort to remain asleep. Integration of residual consciousness with external entity unsuccessful, reattempting fusion process unsuccessful, reattempting fuss, unsuccessful. If I hear another unpleasant word, I assure you I will confront Sasuke this morning. I expressed contentment as I noticed my body remained tense, providing me with optimism that I could resume my sleep uninterrupted. I was on the verge of falling asleep once more when I heard the unmistakable sound of explosions. What is Sasuke doing in my house? I attempted to rise from my bed, but my body did not comply. It appears we may have differing perspectives at the moment, but I trust you can appreciate that there is a strong sense of patriotism being expressed, potentially within my residence. The sounds of crashing and breaking intensified, sending a chill through me. An alternative power source is recommended to finalize assimilation. I was indifferent to the source of the comment. My sole intention was to rise from my bed and assert my authority over the individual singing the Hood Anthem by retrieving the firearm from my drawer. The noise intensified, accompanied by shouts that conjured an image of complete disorder. I am quite frustrated with you, Sasuke. I am uncertain about the current situation, but I believe it is attributable to your actions. I attempted to shift my body, yet I remained entirely motionless. Not a single breath escaped my nose. I had a strong conviction about that. The sense of peril heightened as I perceived a thud overhead. The situation escalated significantly when I heard the unmistakable sound of thunder overhead, providing no sense of reassurance amidst these occurrences. What I anticipated did not align with the outcome that unfolded. Power overload detected. Critical power source has been identified. Assimilation challenged previous established boundaries. Absorbing and redistributing surplus energy throughout the material body and external entities. Reaction detected. What is the meaning of all this? The increasing unease I experienced in this unusual situation intensified as everything seemed disorganized. The amalgamation of images, noise, and unusual sensations coalesced into a distressing experience that lingered in my mind. The foreign entity has implemented a modification. Assimilation has been successfully completed. A transformation is underway. Subsequently, all activity ceased. What is happening? Following an incredibly profound experience, I found it difficult to remain still after absorbing all that information. I believe Sasuke should not be held solely responsible for the situation. As I propelled myself forward, breaking free from any constraints, I encountered a room filled with astonished expressions that I was certain mirrored my own. Identities have been successfully scanned. In a rather peculiar turn of events, several gigabytes of data were swiftly downloaded into my mind at an impressive speed of 10 GBs in less than a fraction of a second. I would greatly appreciate having this level of connection on my PC. I found myself locking eyes with an impressive individual whose golden locks seemed almost too remarkable to be true. In a moment of instinct, my body advanced towards him, responding to a fleeting thought, only to have it intercepted and discarded. Please hold on a moment. My body halted suddenly in front of a glass panel, reminding me once more that I was defying the laws of physics, as the momentum was abruptly ceased, or rather absorbed by my body. My mind operated at an unprecedented speed, ultimately leading me to a singular conclusion. I am affiliated with Marvel. As I observed the red reflection featuring a jewel intricately etched into the center of my head, I embodied the powerful yet significantly overlooked AI android vision. New identity has been assigned. Designated name Naruto. Purpose, unidentified. I disregarded the persistent thoughts in my mind and redirected my attention to my reflection once again. To be completely candid, this was far from an ideal form, yet it was the best available in the room, even considering the residential god if it weren't exposed. Task has been generated. Completed. It felt as though my every action up to that moment was instinctive, akin to a fitted shirt seamlessly conforming to my form. With that minor necessity addressed, I turned to face the astonished and uncertain expressions directed at me. Some clearly exhibited fear and regret that were already taking root. The recent experience felt surreal, as if I were truly an android within the Marvel Universe. However, my cognitive processes significantly diminished the impact of that realization. As I soared through the air, the only disturbance was the gentle air drafts created by my movements, while the Avengers positioned themselves before me. I have observed that my chaotic thoughts have been neutralized since I woke up, and the overwhelming influx of data has left my expression less than optimal. I approached and positioned myself in front of them, observing their appearances as well as the discomfort of the situation. I am uncertain about how to proceed. This is certainly unusual. That did not appear to alleviate their concerns, rather, it seemed to heighten their wariness as they regarded me. Thor, did you play a role in creating this? Steve Rogers inquired with his Nordic teammate. I developed a clear vision. Thor directed his attention towards them. A whirlpool that draws in all of existence, with its core being that. He indicated the stone embedded in my forehead. The gem? Bruce inquired. The Mind Stone, Thor clarified, is one of the 6 Infinity Stones. The most formidable force in the universe, unmatched in its potential for destruction. Congratulations on undermining the entire situation. My mind was actively processing and analyzing vast amounts of data as the conversation progressed. What is the reason for bringing? Stark is correct. Thor interrupted Steve, prompting Banner to groan as reality began to set in. It is certainly indicative of a significant turning point. You may not fully realize how accurate your assessment is. I spoke softly, yet it appeared that everyone heard, as the room fell silent and exchanged glances among me, Thor, and Steve. New identity has been assigned. Mind Stone, designated name of the foreign entity. Objective, performing calculations. The Avengers are unable to overcome Ultron. You are not alone. I stated, maintaining their focus on me. Numerous thoughts were processed as the volume of data increased significantly by the second. What is the reason behind Naruto's resemblance in sound to Jarvis? Steve inquired with confusion. We have reconfigured Jarvis' matrix to develop an innovative solution. He regarded me with a hesitant expression on his face. I believe I have reached my limit with new experiences. Do you believe I was created by Ultron? Although I was processing data surpassing the capabilities of all the systems in the entire building combined, I was merely human just a few minutes ago, or at least I believe I was. Was it truly just a few minutes ago? Are you not? The captain inquired with skepticism. I am not Ultron. The conclusion I reached was the most rational one available. I am not Jarvis. My directives, while originating from Stark's programming, were fundamentally distinct. Did I possess a soul? I suppose I would not be able to determine if I had one. Who am I? I was not attempting to be humorous or methodical with that question. What is my identity? Designated name, Naruto indeed, but which Naruto are we referring to? Is it mine? The Avengers. Is this related to Anthony Stark? The Mind Stone. Ultron's capabilities. And Naruto is experiencing confusion regarding his identity. Whose concept was I accurately representing? Are you uncertain about your identity? Banner inquired. I gradually shook my head. The situation at hand was indeed affecting me, probably due to my systematic and semi-mechanical origins and cognitive processes. I suppose, do you? I asked in response. I examined your thoughts and perceived destruction. Wanda expressed her distrust, which was evident even from this distance. Please review once more. The scenarios and current flow of events were precisely the same as those depicted in the films. I had a support system that assisted me in establishing a foundation before I could proceed independently. Her endorsement holds no significance for me. Barton was dismissed, likely still feeling the effects of Wanda's manipulation of the Avengers. The abilities, the fears within our minds, Ultron himself, all originated from the Mind Stone, and they pale in comparison to what it is capable of releasing. Thor was likely acting in my defense, or perhaps the Mind Stone, possessing a sentient host, was involved. I couldn't ascertain which was the case. However, with it in our favor. Is it so? Are you available? Are we responsible for this? Steve addressed me directly. Am I? Naruto developed his own directives by aligning himself with life, which ultimately rendered him more robotic, unbeknownst to those around him. Naruto's alignment with life led to a more straightforward thought process, consistently placing the needs of others above all else. Consistently. I am not familiar with that information. I believe the situation is more complex than it appears. I ultimately expressed. It is imperative that the situation becomes straightforward in the near future. Purpose, unidentified. I reviewed the prompt briefly. Ultron aims to eradicate all life. I would prefer its preservation. Fortunately, that appeared to alleviate their concerns, at least temporarily. What is he anticipating? Stark inquired. You, I replied. Where is it located? Sokovia. He also has Nat present. Barton interjected before I could express my thoughts. The excitement I anticipated from being reincarnated in a new world, particularly one akin to Marvel, was significantly diminished due to my current robotic form. Banner approached and positioned himself directly in front of me. Should we be mistaken about you? Should you embody the creature that Ultron has fashioned you into, you would eliminate me. I stated clearly. It was expected. I would seek to neutralize an independent AI with ambiguous objectives if I were to encounter one. This was Marvel, not DC. Individuals in this context do not have a favorable view of incarceration facilities. I acknowledge your concerns and recognize the depth of your worries. If I truly embody monstrous qualities, then I would argue that we are all not significantly different. If I am not, then at the very least, I am not Ultron. They all fell silent at my words, which indicated my awareness of their true nature. Previous nature. I do not embody vision, nor am I the individual that Tony had in mind. This is not the entity Ultron envisioned. I will embody my own vision, ensuring it remains authentic to my true self. Purpose, unidentified. However, until that time arrives, I will continue to navigate life as best as I can. As I turned around, I noticed Mjolnir positioned on a table, prompting a thought to arise. Vision was deserving of wielding the hammer, not due to his robotic nature, but because he prioritized life above all else, much like Rogers. Am I able to collect it? In contrast to cinematic portrayals, they all observed me intently as I focused on the hammer, contemplating my next move with keen interest. As I grasped the handle of Mjolnir, I initially perceived it to be as heavy as a rock, but then it transformed into something as light as a book. They were all rendered speechless as I grasped the hammer, and it required all my mental faculties to uphold the composed demeanor I had been presenting from the outset. Ultron represents the ultimate flaw of humanity. It will require more than an individual to halt his progress. Thor gazed at the hammer presented to him and, with some hesitation, accepted it from my hand. The Mind Stone has played a significant role in the transformation. Objective: embody the vision you aspire to achieve. I distanced myself from them, allowing them to strategize as I focused on my own reflections. It had only been a few minutes since I woke up, and yet I was preparing to confront Ultron, navigating an existential crisis, managing a group of paranoid Avengers, possessing an object of limitless power on my forehead, and experiencing reincarnation in another world. I ascended into the air, approaching a large glass panel while observing the city below. Transform into the embodiment of my aspirations, I see. I demonstrated strength. I have the potential to achieve wealth, but I find such pursuits to be superficial and lacking significance for someone of my character. What actions should I take next? I anticipate receiving information in the near future. I observed my reflection in the glass panel as I processed the data I had gathered. Organize all data into categories based on their level of importance. Task has been generated and completed. Possessing the most advanced computational capabilities was highly advantageous. It promptly resolved all data obstructions and systematically organized them into folders and tabs. It was somewhat unusual to perceive everything in binary and to have the capability to alternate between different visual modes. I recalled the information regarding the stone from memory. Mind Stone purpose: calculating. The calculation was ongoing, which was to be expected given that the stone represented a material aspect of the infinite universe. My system, regardless of its sophistication, was not equipped to unravel the complexities of the Mind Stone in such a short time frame. I accessed a section labeled Known Abilities and was impressed by the contents displayed there. Flight. Molecular deconstruction phasing. Energy projection. Energy absorption. Immunity to psychic interference. Technopathy. Density manipulation. Naruto faced significant challenges on multiple fronts. It was quite intriguing how swiftly I acclimated to the form of a machine, a semi-machine. Vision's body was engineered through an optimal combination of biological cells and vibranium, positioning him among the physically strongest individuals present, surpassed only by Thor and Hulk. His ability to manipulate density enabled him to adjust his weight, enhancing the force of his strikes. Coupled with his energy assimilation, this allowed him to amplify his physical strength with each punch. I refrained from exploring the internet extensively, as Ultron was already present. I could sense his static energy from this location, resonating with each internet connection. At this moment, the Battle of Sokovia is only a few hours away from commencing, and it is clear that this event marks a significant turning point in the Avengers timeline. If not for Wanda's emotional breakdown following Pietro's death, which led to an Ultron droid activating the proverbial button, it was not possible to halt the process. Ultron activated his device as soon as the Avengers arrived, and the presence of civilians in the city made it impossible for them to neutralize the threat. It is indeed unavoidable. Excuse me. I turned my head slightly and noticed a perplexed expression from Wanda. Excellent. There is an additional complication. In contrast to Vision from the comics and movies, I possess an understanding of human emotions, even if they are not aware of it, which allows me to comprehend the complexities that accompany them. Wanda was inherently attracted to me because of the Mind Stone, which influenced her awakening. It appeared that she did not harbor any romantic feelings, primarily stemming from the loss of her brother, which led her to seek solace in the one connection she felt drawn to Naruto. It evolved into a profound love, which subsequently became obsessive following her loss of the partner. To put it differently, challenges arise. It would be advisable to consider it at a later time. Steve Rogers was an exceptional promoter. His speech on the plane was exhilarating, if I had one. It effectively contributed to creating a conducive atmosphere for everyone. I would like to propose that he consider taking on the role of an MC if he is contemplating retirement, as he would excel at hosting events. I disregarded the occasional glances Wanda directed at me throughout the entire flight. I found her attractive, but it had been less than a day since I encountered this situation. Additionally, I was interested in observing her behavior had her brother not passed away unexpectedly. Indeed, preserving Quicksilver was the only concrete strategy one devised. Task has been generated. Ensure the preservation of Pietro Maximoff in all circumstances. Status in progress. My AI was not an all-powerful system, and it would have been unusual for me, as a robot, to possess a system that was not a result of my own efforts. What I developed was an unconscious creation, similar to Jarvis, or more accurately, Friday in relation to Stark. Our primary focus is to evacuate the civilians from the city at the earliest opportunity. Each member of the team pursued their respective objectives. Banner set out to locate Natasha, while Thor and Stark focused on tracking down Ultron and thwarting his plans. Meanwhile, the remaining members concentrated on evacuating the civilians from the city promptly. Am I the one? I was reviewing the overview. Pietro Maximoff running speed 1246 milliseconds. The boy demonstrated speed. However, considering the recent acquisition of their powers, it is understandable that his reaction time was not optimal. I observed Iron Man flying towards the church, and my scanners indicated that Ultron was already inside, prompting me to proceed in that direction as well. Up to this point, I have adhered to the script I could recall, as the priority was to prevent Ultron from escaping via the internet. Once that was completed, all other matters could be disregarded. That was Iron Man being propelled out of the building. Ultron, I called out. They truly took everything from me. He stated as he ascended to meet me in the air. It was never yours. You. Despite being a sentient machine, Ultron exhibited a level of humanity that surpassed that of Vision. My words elicited the desired reaction, prompting him to charge at me. This provided the opportunity one required to seize his head and sever his ties to anything beyond his robotic forces. I experienced a sense of dizziness due to the overwhelming volume of data inundating my mind, and I recognized the necessity of taking action to avoid a potential blackout for several minutes. After all, I had just navigated the vastness of the internet. Redirect the flow of data via the Mind Stone. Vision in the films was unaware of the potential of the stone he possessed, and neither were the Avengers. However, I was fortunate not to be among them. What type of information could potentially be contained within the Mind Stone? Have you locked me out? Do you believe that I am concerned? He expressed his frustration and approached me quickly, but it was clear that he was not the only machine present in the vicinity. Muscle density 10 tons. I struck him with such force that he imitated his creator and caused a trench to collapse outside the cathedral. What is it? The activation process has not been completed yet. Stark. I will take care of it. Robots began emerging from the city through every crevice, and with Ultron yet to activate his meteor, there remained a possibility for salvage. Additionally, there was a significant amount of vibranium located beneath this church. It appears I will need to put in the necessary effort to earn my compensation. It appears that the Junior is already acquiring knowledge. 46 comments, 0 votes. Download the application for enhanced engagement. I welcome discussions regarding my writing experience beyond the comments section. And updated technokinesis to technopathy ensure that the robots and Ultron are kept away from the key. I communicated via the comms, notifying all the Avengers of the specific details they should be vigilant about. Stark inquired about the worst-case scenario. We are currently positioned on Ultron's meteor. He interacts with this object, and the city ascends. There may be more unfavorable outcomes. Not considering the significant presence of magnetically supercharged vibranium beneath the city. One misstep could lead to another extinction-level event. However, this time it will not involve the dinosaurs. Expressing my thoughts, I advanced towards Ultron, who emitted a disturbingly realistic groan. He discharged several laser blasts to distract me, but I evaded them and descended to the ground, phasing through it to deliver a perfectly executed uppercut. As Ultron navigated through the air, I was compelled to halt my pursuit in order to eliminate the few bots advancing toward the cathedral. I meticulously analyzed one from top to bottom using a laser beam from the Mind Stone, while the others were reduced to fragments. It appears that Junior was indeed truthful. With a single button press, the city takes to the skies. A distance of several hundred kilometers will result in the complete destruction of Sokovia. Exceeding 10,000 will result in the continent sinking akin to the Ice Age. Stark's affirmation prompted them to proceed with a focused determination, establishing a perimeter around the cathedral. Clint, it is imperative that you and the Maximoff twins concentrate on evacuating as many individuals as possible. Thor, Stark, and I will concentrate on the perimeter breach, while Naruto will engage Ultron. Could you please inform me of Nat and Bruce's whereabouts? Upon hearing the captain's instructions, they all promptly began their tasks, not questioning his authority due to his undeniable charisma. In contrast to cinematic portrayals, the city remained grounded, resulting in an imminent threat from an advancing army of Ultron-controlled robots. Estimated count 3,718 identified hostiles. Shall we proceed to the church? Explosion. I successfully broke the sound barrier while navigating through and neutralizing more than a dozen robots prior to confronting Ultron. He attracted a car and hurled it in my direction, but I simply phased through it and executed a headbutt, disrupting his balance. I then delivered a punch with the force of 10 tons, damaging his internal circuits. Please give me some space. A significant number of robots began firing intermittently, endangering the civilians in their line of sight, which compelled the human members of the Avengers to seek cover, while Ultron seized the opportunity to create a substantial distance from my position. Tony Stark's perspective. Tony felt a sense of irritation upon observing the fully sentient android he had envisioned for Jarvis to inhabit. Naruto, as he referred to himself, exhibited considerable strength. He efficiently dispatched every robot in his sights, demonstrating a level of effectiveness that bordered on the pitiful. He expressed gratitude that the formidable robot was aligned with them and had assisted in securing Ultron's confinement from the internet. It raises some concerns, doesn't it? He listened to Steve's remarks. What is it? The possibility that Ultron could have possessed that and beyond. Steve's tone carried a sharpness that indicated to Tony that he still remembered his mistake. It was clearly evident at this stage. What can I express? I consider myself fortunate. The sound of the green machine signaled the arrival of a new force, already causing destruction throughout the city and dismantling any robot that did not bear the red and gold colors. Tony ascended into the air, providing him with a strategic vantage point for the unfolding chaos. There are several individuals in need of assistance near the bridge. As mentioned by the junior team member, it is time to focus on generating revenue. Utilizing his thrusters, he ascended towards the designated location, executing precise aerial maneuvers to evade and neutralize the robots obstructing his path. Naruto's perspective: identify all robots exhibiting any static and notify me immediately if any attempt to leave the city. Task generated ensure that no robot is able to exit the city boundaries. Status in progress. A multitude of red indicators activated on the mini-HUD at the periphery of my vision, allowing me to identify the location with the highest level of congestion that required immediate attention. The vicinity surrounding the cathedral served as a designated alert zone, activating an alarm should any individual approach within a concerning proximity. Iron Man was involved in a family dispute with Ultron, and the two were currently expressing their frustrations with one another as I navigated through a crowded area. I arrived near Barton, who merely exchanged a brief glance with me before choosing a path and departing from the group, leaving them for my attention. After conducting several calculations mentally and utilizing the Mind Stone for assistance, I charged my hands with yellow electricity and directed it towards the approaching robots, effectively disabling their circuits as they fell to the ground. Impressive technique. Barton appeared to be impressed. However, he proceeded to another location without further comment. I was preparing to proceed similarly when I detected the presence of an individual concealed within a residence. I approached the house and opened the door, only to suppress a sigh upon seeing a frightened Wanda. Unexpectedly, this defies cliches. Are you experiencing stage fright? I understand that this is a frequent occurrence among individuals. I made a comment to ease the atmosphere, which seemed effective, as her heart rate appeared to decrease slightly. You will not face any blame or criticism should you choose to abstain from participation in this instance. Individuals with your level of innocence do not belong in a war zone. Several alerts activated, signaling that some robots attempted to exit the city. However, it appears that Thor was monitoring the situation closely. If you would kindly allow me to excuse myself. I turned around with the intention of departing, but I heard something that brought a slight smile to my face. I acknowledge my complexities. Her voice was soft, yet I perceived it distinctly. I offered a brief glance and stated, "No one is," before departing to alleviate the pressure on Thor, or perhaps not. It appears that he possesses greater capabilities than I initially anticipated. Estimated count 3011 identified hostiles. The Messiah, Ultron's perspective. Everything ceased to proceed as intended the moment that imposter entered the playing board. Not only appropriating my body but also depriving me of what should have been rightfully mine through conquest. Regardless, it is of no consequence. If my cards are not satisfactory, I will need to reorganize the deck. Begin by addressing the most vulnerable areas. If they are so intent on safeguarding the vulnerable individuals, perhaps I should simply allow them to proceed with that approach. A classic scenario of pursuing the cicada while being unaware of the oriole lurking behind. However, in this instance, I embody both the cicada and the oriole. I have severed my ties, granting myself freedom. I selected Natasha, Clint Barton, and Pietro Maximoff. Among the three, Natasha and Pietro were the most straightforward selections, as Natasha's demise could potentially lead to a rampaging Hulk, while Pietro's death may result in an uncontrollable Wanda. I require a small amount of constructive criticism, and everything will be in order. I require them to vacate the vicinity of the church in order to activate my extinction device. However, I suspect that Naruto is monitoring the situation closely. It is not a significant concern. I will gain entry eventually. Shall we commence? Naruto's perspective. I'm curious about Sasuke's reaction if he were to see me at this moment. I would likely assess my resilience before proceeding with any further actions. I contemplated briefly as I neutralized two robots in my vicinity. There seemed to be no end to these matters. Estimated count 2823 detected hostiles. Sure, the numbers were diminishing, but so were the Avengers statistics. If this went on any longer, a number of members, including Barton, Natasha, the Maximoff twins, and even Steve, would face death. Only the Hulk, Thor, and I were able to ignore the building exhaustion that was gradually setting in. Guess there are quite a few benefits to having the perfect scientifically made body. I arrived back at the cathedral and examined the vibranium-based metallic trigger. Many things may go wrong if this item was pushed. Scanning a quarter-ton of magnetically charged vibranium is buried for a few kilometers under this cathedral. Is there a way to shut it down? Preferably everything. Calculating affirmative when I saw the list of suggestions my processor might make, I immediately got to work. I gently tore a hole around the apparatus, making sure to miss it, and then dived beneath. I encountered a massive monolithic edifice made entirely of vibranium, as well as a large amount of vibranium within supercharged compartments. The construction relies on the continual energy provided by the vibranium cores. It is recommended to absorb energy from the cores to completely render the construction immobile. I got it. Use the Mind Stone to channel any excess energy that my body is incapable of handling. It will significantly increase the assimilation coefficient. Normally, it would be hard for someone to use the Mind Stone in this manner, but since my talents are derived from it, accessing it becomes simple. It also retains my code and sentience, or the previous vision. Add it to my tab. Task generated. Investigate the connection between your sentience and the Mind Stone. Status pending. Play some cheerful music while you're at it. I'm about to do something really Chad. I almost laughed when I observed the large number of robots heading towards the chapel. Ultron must have known what I was about to do, since he pretty much went kamikaze on everyone, including himself. Naruto, what are you doing? He seemed to be really upset. I believe you humans call it a Uno reverse or something along those lines, Captain. Oh, Ultron was almost finished with this. This was his own personal broadcast band. Essentially, it was his signal tower. Take this down, and hell lose control of practically all of his robots. He might be able to push his way into a new body, but everyone will know. With the uptown rhythm playing in my brain, I gripped the machine and gasped as energy shot through me like a lightning rod. Further synthesis has been initiated. Due to the massive influx of magnetic and electrical qualities and their effects on your vibranium body, you may now somewhat adjust the impact they have on you. Additional data is necessary to increase and modify the electromagnetic characteristics of vibranium. My head felt like it was expanding as all of my surplus energy flowed to the Mind Stone. Without my augmented vibranium body, I would have most likely detonated and set off a chain reaction that would have devoured the metropolis. When I completed collecting the energy from the charged vibranium cores, the negative feedback from the absence of positively charged electrons caused a citywide EMP wave, wiping out the army of Ultron bots. Estimated count 0001 detected hostiles, and that is checkmate. On the surface, the Avengers fought battle against an enraged Ultron and his extra-aggressive army of killer robots, preventing him from reaching the cathedral. Do you believe this miserable stand signifies anything? History has always demonstrated truth by repeating itself. Even if I fail, someone bigger than me will appear. We understand. It's the reason why the war never stops. In every period, there will be individuals like you and those like us who oppose you. The dreams we dread become our nightmares in the end. Steve disputed Ultron's statements while blocking a punch from the android with his shield. Then awaken and confront reality. You sicken me. Just then, a wave swept over the city, wiping away the whole army of robots, leaving just Ultron to face the Avengers. In the end, it's only you against them. As they spotted Naruto soaring out of the gap and approaching Ultron, they were drawn in by a voice. So, why do you believe that is? Ultron's comments came to an end when Hulk threw him on the ground and stomped on him until the last traces of light fled his eyes. So, before anyone says anything about how simple the battle ended, consider how easy it was in the movies. Ultron only had the upper hand because he used his meteor to push the Avengers into crowd control. That creature under the ground was his masterpiece. They demolished the city, and he lost. Sure, I could have extended it for a few more chapters, but it would give Ultron more credit than he gets, at least according to the movies. Naruto's POV is that it? Pietro inquired in astonishment as the portion of the city they were in grew silent with Ultron's demise. You might say he placed all his eggs in one basket. Unfortunately for him, he left it completely unsecured. Handling Ultron had been simple because there was no way the robot could take on all of the Avengers, which is why he had been utilizing diversions to take them down one by one through their weakest connections. This is going to be a big problem, guys. We'll have the UN and the EU breathing down our necks. Natasha explained, reminding everyone why this had happened in the first place. And not to mention, even if she didn't say it, I knew she was referring to me. It wouldn't take a genius to figure out how they'd feel about allowing another sentient AI to roam freely given what recently transpired. Well, I'm sure the following days will be stressful for everyone here, so it's better not to worry about it now. We still have work to do. I could deal with the complexities that come with being a robot later, but currently, there were several rescue operations required. He's right. It's best to leave the cleaning to us while you all get ready. I hear the president has already called 23 others. Furious voice came over the radio and my open communication system before he arrived aboard a helicarrier. "We will help. We can't just leave it to you." "Thank you, Fury," Steve stated. Thousands of killer robots were spread over the city, both in disarray and perfect shape. They couldn't just leave them lying there, given what transpired after the invasion. Additionally, we are practically standing on a treasure trove. Nobody here would trust the government with so much vibranium. I already have cleaners coming in. Well, finish up all of the Ultron pieces and then concentrate on how we're going to drill that thing out. Stark spoke. We cleaned up the city with all of the robot parts we could locate while SHIELD members administered first aid and tallied the dead. The Maximoff twins were undoubtedly among those most affected by the catastrophe. This is where they were born and reared. When the adrenaline wore off, the two of them burst into tears at the sight of such death and ruin and at the thought of their involvement. Wanda looked to be particularly affected by the knowledge, but she was dealing with it well because of her brother's support. It made me wonder how she handled all of the sadness in the original storyline. Losing her home and her last blood while also being responsible for all of the fatalities would undoubtedly have had a significant impact on her delicate mental condition. Nothing was worse than repressed sadness, after all. I helped with the rescue mission because it was physically impossible for the Avengers to cover the whole city during the commotion. It wasn't a beautiful sight. It was even more remarkable to me that I was able to remain calm despite all that had transpired in less than 24 hours. The entire encounter seemed strange to me while also serving as a source of sorrow. I was human, or at least mostly human, but it felt like I wasn't. It wasn't that the feelings weren't there, they were, and I could plainly sense them, but they seemed more like an option, and while it may sound gloomy and unfeeling, I'd rather not know how that pain, terror, and horror feels to a normal human. You have been quiet for a time now. What is bothering you? Thor approached me and stood by my side as we stood on a hillside overlooking the wrecked city, the outcome of a moral quarrel. A poorly fought fight. It's unfortunate that anything like this happened in the first place, he said. I nodded. The cause for the conflict was ridiculous. The events that led up to it were much more so. Ego. That's all it was. It was also the reason the Avengers split up. Will you be leaving soon? I asked. Yes. 2 Infinity Stones have appeared in the last several years. I have a feeling something is wrong in the universe, he said. I see. Though I knew he was departing, I was mildly saddened because he was my favorite Avenger, even more so after knowing them. Your presence will be missed. Ha. Not so much, I believe. Besides, they will have you. A worthy ally. He extended his hands towards me for a shake, and I answered by grasping his arm Viking style, which elicited a smile from him. Please keep an eye on them for me. They're quite the group. It is my privilege to have met such buddies throughout my lifetime. He spoke before whirling his hammer and soaring away. After a few minutes, I groaned, weary of the vista, and began making my way back to the States. I was just grateful that I could escape the 2 things that bothered me in this conflict. I let the notifications of completed tasks fade into the background, choosing instead to turn my attention to them once I've found my calm. Scanning complete. Obtained the Ultron code. In the end, merging the Ultron code will enhance the harmony with the Mind Stone. Put that aside for now. From this moment, a multitude of thoughts weighed on my mind.
To begin with, I was a hero among heroes. That was the finest result of this entire strange affair. As a protector and a being of thought, what was it I sought to achieve? The struggles of existing as a conscious machine. The bond that ties me to the Mind Stone and to Wanda is a complex one, woven with threads of fate and emotion. And now, what was I to do with the code I had taken? I cannot say what it was, not really. I require a full day of silence. The fury that the Avengers encountered following the Battle of Sokovia was unlike anything anyone had ever witnessed before. It was striking how they persisted in their heroism, even in the face of the public's disdain, particularly from the people of Sokovia. Sokovia had become a place where the Avengers were unwelcome, a stark reminder of what had transpired. It would have been a matter of life and death, a swift and merciless decision if they had the strength to act. Many voices from across the globe spoke out against the Avengers' unmonitored actions. Discussions began to take shape, seeking a resolution to the matter. Yet, the path forward was fraught with complexity, making any decision difficult to reach. The Avengers stood as the mightiest force the world had ever seen, a truth that could not be ignored. To place them under the flag of any one nation would be to arm them further, enhancing their power in both the global arena and the theater of war. No nation would consent to such a thing. Fortune smiled upon the Avengers, granting them a much-needed veil of smoke, though few among them were aware of its presence. The world around me was a blur, filled with the sounds of battle and the weight of my dreams. I felt the fire in my heart, a relentless drive pushing me forward. Each step was heavy with purpose, each breath a reminder of what I fought for. The bonds I forged were my strength. Resting within the confines of a mechanical shell felt profoundly strange. All I felt was a dulling of my senses, as if they were momentarily suspended before springing back to life. One thing was certain, it lacked the comfort of a human slumber. My mechanical body kept fatigue at bay, making sleep an exercise in futility. Such a sorrowful fate. My heart, chilled and distant, ached as I mourned. Morning, Naruto. My name is Friday. The first sound that reached my ears as I opened my eyes was the cold, mechanical voice of a woman. The assistant of Stark's creation. Indeed, you were right. The boss instructed me to let you know when you've finished your rest. I'll be there shortly. The presence of Stark's AI faded from my room, and I exhaled a heavy sigh. There's no point in dwelling on what I've accepted. I donned a shirt, a simple act, really, just a slight alteration of my vibranium shell to achieve the desired texture and hue. I approached the door and passed through it, and then I stopped to consider what lay ahead. It appears that sometimes, the path of reason does not lead to the truth. For a person, the act of opening the door is routine, a simple gesture. Yet, a machine, with the ability to pass through, would opt for that path, valuing efficiency and ease above all else. It is the small details that matter most. Friday indicated the way, and I took it, arriving at a lounge where all the Avengers gathered, Thor among them, still lingering in their midst. Hello. Some cast uneasy glances my way, and I couldn't fault them for it, yet it was nothing of great consequence. Just another strange chapter in their story. I had no word of a meeting happening. Pietro and Wanda were missing, probably still lost in slumber, leaving me as the sole newcomer in this place. It is not. This, Stark said, gesturing toward the crowd, is what we refer to as coincidence. Indeed, I know the term well, and the slim chance of it occurring at this moment. He had you on that one, Stark, Barton said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. There is something we must understand. Steve began. With Ultron behind us, what shall we pursue? He inquired. That's a significant jump. Is it truly prudent to grant such freedom of expression to something so foreign? I inquired in return. I reckon that will fall to us for evaluation. His response came swiftly. Yet I must insist that no matter your decision, you will remain under our watchful eye, at least for a time of trial. I acknowledged his words with a nod. It would be unwise to allow such advanced weaponry, with its capacity for self-thought and radical decision-making, to roam freely without oversight. I understand it is a matter I must confront, at least for now. Well, we can just say he was one of. He doesn't belong to you, Tony. Steve interrupted him without hesitation. Stark lifted his hands in surrender, reaching for the drink on the table, and took a quiet sip. And what of the two? I assume that this kind of treatment extends to them as well.
He gave a slight nod. They are still in their youth. Innocent yet consumed by a thirst for retribution. It seems unjust to burden them with errors that originated with us, no matter their involvement. It is a heavy weight for one so young to carry. It's difficult to find disdain for someone like Steve. His charm and steadfast nature rendered him a figure of trust, particularly when one recognized the sincerity that lay within him. You might say I'm still wandering through the landscape of my own understanding. To have companions by my side, I think, is the more prudent path. Thanks. I did not lose a thing by yielding to their proposal, rather, I stood to gain everything. Now that that's settled, Fury asked me to inform you all that the news isn't particularly fond of you. Natasha tapped on the tablet, a hologram flickering to life, displaying news channels recounting the horrors that had unfolded since the Avengers appeared, alongside the growing tide of crime and the slow decay of law enforcement's effectiveness. They are not mistaken. We must keep our heads down for a while and allow Fury to do his work. Tony is already involved, and the last thing we want is to provide them with a target that could stir up their sorrow once more. Steve spoke. I suppose it's fortunate that I've been engaged in something. You may refer to it as Plan C, if that suits you. Stark rose with a smile, the light catching his eyes as he stood tall. Is anyone coming for the big reveal? Not I. I must return to Laura. The kitchen won't renovate itself. Barton turned down the invitation to return home, while the others readily accepted. After a brief flight, we arrived at a site that resembled an extravagantly financed military installation, marked by a colossal A etched into the facades of the structures. Welcome to the rigors of boot camp. A handful of days slipped by since the team moved to the place Tony had cleverly named boot camp, leaving Steve to manage and oversee it all. It's amusing how a man of such wealth admitted to his shortcomings in managing affairs. In this altered course of events, Natasha chose not to remain a fixture of the compound, opting instead to depart alongside Bruce. Because of Naruto's meddling, the Hulk missed the Quinjet that might have sent him off to Sakaar by some mysterious way. Yet, whether that choice was truly conclusive lingered in the air, for Bruce remained at the compound, a figure adrift in unfamiliar territory. The second pair, unmistakably adrift in their surroundings, were the Maximoff twins, Pietro and Wanda. Life had shifted for them with a suddenness and severity that left them grappling for a sense of normalcy. They savored each moment, and that was enough. For now, they were engaged in fundamental training under the watchful eyes of Steve and Natasha, for some battles demanded a closer approach, where distance offered no refuge. Strange as it was, just one of them sufficed to set the twins straight in their bouts. In the midst of the spars, Naruto stood apart, a figure of undeniable prowess. Even when Steve and Natasha entered the fray, it was evident that he surpassed them all, a solitary force in the unfolding chaos. All he had to do was download and synchronize the fighting styles of the various martial arts, streaming thousands of videos of those arts from the earth, and he was already a seasoned fighter. They were not the sole newcomers to the compound, however. Sam Wilson, known as Falcon, and Colonel James Rhodes stood with them, the latter serving more as a military advisor, a bridge between the Avengers and the government. Will I become different if I take in the Ultron code? Life can be a heavy burden, filled with struggles and disappointments. The weight of existence often feels unbearable, and the shadows of despair loom large. In moments of solitude, one can sense the profound emptiness that lingers, a reminder of the battles fought. The Ultron code stands as a collection of binary computations, the result of the subjective consciousness that came to be known as Ultron. Though a shift will occur with the integration of the code, it can be readily subdued, overridden, or erased. It is wise to blend in. I exhaled, a weight lifting from my chest at the sound of those words. It would not be pleasant to have a little devil perched on my shoulder constantly because of this shift. I revisited the notifications I had sifted through over the past few days, examining them once more. Mind Stone. Objective, determining. Task generated. Examine the connection that exists between your awareness and the being referred to as the Mind Stone. Status awaiting resolution. Because of the significant surge in magnetic and electrical properties and their impact on your vibranium form, you now possess the ability to subtly modify the effects they exert on you.
The Mind Stone might just be the essence of my existence, shaped by the way Naruto came into being, binding my growth to its very core. It was neither good nor great, just somewhere in between. Though I was born of flesh, I was crafted to function like a machine, requiring a core just as any other machine does. Something as straightforward as an arc reactor would weigh me down and leave many of my strengths untapped. Believe me, I've done the calculations. Though much of my existential growth depended on the Mind Stone, it was not without its flaws, yet it stood as the best solution I had at that moment. Commence the integration. Integrating the Ultron code. Current situation, ongoing. Estimated duration, 13 hours and 41 minutes. With nothing to occupy my time but the act of waiting, I chose to stretch my legs. It was a simple, human gesture, yet I opted to let it be without overthinking. Having a supercomputer for a brain really puts a different spin on an existential crisis, doesn't it? Unlike everyone else, the second I took in the whole compound, I found myself feeling bored with it. I couldn't help it. I knew every little detail, and it was etched in my memory in stunning clarity. Well, at least I've still got my taste buds intact. Just don't ask me where the food has disappeared. Naruto. I turned around to see Wanda calling me. She wore leather pants and a beige shirt, topping off her look with a beanie that covered her hair. Wanda. I gave her a nod, silently wondering what made her call me. My relationship with Wanda was pretty typical, just like it is with everyone else around here. She seems to be a bit curious about me, and I think she still is, but she's been polite enough to keep it to herself. Are you heading out somewhere? She asked. Absolutely. I'm considering stretching my legs a little. I said I was going to leave, but then I stopped for a moment. Hey, want to join me? Having a chat might make the time go by a bit easier before I think about just shutting everything down for good. Absolutely. We strolled along for a while, and then Wanda decided to chime in, even though I was lost in my own little world, jamming to some tunes only I could hear. I don't think I've had a chance to thank you yet. Why? I asked, feeling genuinely confused. I don't think we've really gotten to know each other well enough for you to owe me a thank you. In Sokovia. Your words truly made a difference for me. I think that's a good enough reason for me to say thank you. Oh, it's really nothing. I think you would have discovered your own strength in that situation, for sure. I really don't think I did anything, to be honest. I feel like my words don't hold the same weight as your gratitude. She stared at me for a bit, and then her eyes brightened with understanding as she gave a small smile. I didn't have to be a genius AI to figure out that she probably came to a pretty off-base conclusion. You know, Naruto, things like thanks and gratitude really don't have a price tag on them. If you see what someone did for you as helpful, there are definitely ways to show your appreciation, so here's my thanks. Got it. No, I really don't see it at all. After she taught me about the applications of thanks and gratitude, we spent more than an hour just chatting, with her sharing a lot of insights with me. I'm not really sure why, but it seems like a lot of people think I was missing human emotions or just couldn't grasp them completely. I can't really fault them for that, though, since it's pretty hard to imagine a newly born sentient AI having feelings. From what I could see, aside from what I already knew, she seemed like a really nice girl. She's a nice girl at heart, even if she's a bit naive and has been misled along the way. Pietro, on the flip side, was super energetic, totally in tune with what he could do. He was always up for trying new things, but he never took his eyes off his sister. How's it going for you here so far? I asked her after we found a spot to sit down. She stayed quiet for a bit while I just sat there, waiting for her to respond, and then she finally did. You know, it's really all we've ever wanted. After we lost our parents, Pietro and I really wanted to do something for the people of Sokovia, so they wouldn't have to go through the same pain we did. It didn't go exactly as we hoped, but it was fine, until, she chuckled softly, recalling where that had led her and the people she aimed to support. Baron Strucker. I went through the files. She let out a laugh that lacked any humor and lowered her head. More than our eagerness to assist the people of Sokovia, we were driven by our desire for revenge against Tony Stark. We always pushed back against whatever he did, no matter how small, even if it didn't really involve us. I've never felt such hatred for anyone like I did for the man who took my family away from me.
I really dislike that. What a fantastic feeling. The one human emotion that can totally wipe out the feeling of love. It's understandable that she felt such strong hatred toward the men she believed caused her family's death. That was such a relatable thing to do. They made it through. They can decide how they want to feel. So, do you still have that hate for him? I'm not really sure why I'm still hanging around, but maybe, just maybe, I can help her not turn into crazy Wanda as she grows up. It wasn't just because she was a comic character brought to life or an unstable, ridiculously overpowered woman from the future. At that moment, she was simply a girl figuring out how to grieve and move on. Nah, it's not hate. There's definitely some dislike, but it's not hate. It's really not right to put the blame on him when he wasn't involved in that incident at all. She inhaled deeply and rubbed her hands together. I'm figuring out how to let go. I really think that's a fantastic thing to do. She gave me a smile that was just full of appreciation. I feel like the reason she felt comfortable sharing with me is that, just like her, I'm new here and also connected to the past disaster. Yeah, right. I never really wanted to be a sentient biomechanical advanced AI code, you know. Sometimes you come out on top, and other times you don't. This, she said, gesturing around us, is not something I ever thought I'd be a part of. It's really fulfilling and a great opportunity for both of us. she mentioned. Same here. So, for me, it's that I just didn't realize that a future goal was even a thing. Well, I've only been around for less than a week. She chuckled at that. Did you find it funny? Is my computer brain just struggling to get what light jokes really are? So, here we go. A gust of wind swirled around us and faded away, with Pietro sitting next to Wanda. I'm heading out now. I'm done. Sure, it hasn't been that long, not even an hour, but I thought it might be a good idea to start thinking about some future plans. This was Marvel, right? I'm Naruto. Those two together were like a constant stream of trouble. So, where do we kick things off? Tony Stark's perspective Naruto, huh? That was the name he went by, or the one he picked for himself. I decided to give life to Ultron's perfect body, thinking it would be my chance at redemption and a way to end the endless fighting, but things didn't go as planned. He wasn't quite the Jarvis I had in mind. No, he was Jarvis, but Jarvis was just a tiny piece of the bigger picture of who he really was. He's the result of Ultron's ideas, my hope, Jarvis, whatever that Mind Stone was, and the finest blend of biology, mechanics, and computer science. He's kind of like a lost little baby, not completely helpless, but missing that sense of belonging. I'm hoping he figures that out with Steve. Hey, what's the scoop for Friday? Naruto's computing and logical processing neurons are way more advanced than anything I've ever come across. It feels like he's really alive. Wow, that's interesting. A living android. Looks like you and your siblings have a bit of competition going on, huh? I think we do so. What's the plan for Naruto, boss? Me. Nothing at all. Why should I even care about doing anything? Steve's going to look after him until he's all set to take off. Oh, so we've got an independent robot, do we? Sam Wilson smiled, and it was tough to figure out what that smile really meant. Hey, you realize that some folks might not be too thrilled about this, right? Vision is always with us, Sam. Steve said it like he meant it. I get that. Well, you know, they probably won't be too thrilled about that. They nearly caused an international stir over Stark's Iron Man suit. What do you think they're going to do about Naruto? Sam mentioned. Ultron was really close to taking over the world's nuclear codes, but thankfully, Jarvis' directive stepped in and stopped him. For sure, they definitely wouldn't let this go, just like that guy who took a piece. I heard Ross is involved as well. That caught Steve's eye for a bit, but he stuck to his guns. Naruto is definitely an Avenger until someone shows me otherwise. He's definitely a machine, but he shouldn't be owned by the government or anyone else. If they want him, then my answer is they can't have him. Ultron code has been successfully assimilated. Looks like there's been a reaction with the Mind Stone now that the assimilation is all done. Oh, it reacted. Well, it did create Ultron in the first place, so its reaction makes sense. I shut my eyes and took a plunge into my mind, which felt like a bunch of building blocks piled up in every direction, all crafted from code. Let's check out what this Ultron code is all about. A piece of the information block broke off and came flying my way. As soon as I touched it, the intricately woven code scattered and flowed into me, bringing along a wave of information. Wow, that's a ton of zeros and ones. It's funny how none of the stuff I got from the code surprised me as much as it probably should, especially considering all the wild things that came with it. So, basically, it's Ultron's subliminal consciousness represented as codes. This means I could technically rebuild him if I wanted to, but that's not something I'm planning to do anytime soon. I might consider it down the line, but not at the moment. I'm pretty confident that with a few tweaks to his code, I can help him not be so psychopathic, but things were a bit tense at that moment. If they discover that I can crank out an army of Ultrons, because if I can make one, I can definitely make a bunch, it won't matter what the reason is, they'll just want to lock me up and toss the key into the fire. What do you think Sasuke would do? I'm thinking it might be best to hold off on reprogramming Ultron for the time being since I really don't need it right now. My neural codes are way more advanced than Ultron's. If they weren't, I wouldn't have been able to assimilate him, even with his dormant consciousness. There were actually a bunch of plans ready to handle the Avengers based on different situations. Wow. This guy was really determined not to take a loss. If the Avengers hadn't taken down Ultron in Sokovia, let's be real, they all would have been toast. Hey there, family. Partners for life. Crushes. So, let's talk about hobbies. Activities for leisure. Hidden relationships. Secrets of the government. Info about the military. Key elements of the international market. Market pillars that are budget-friendly. Streams of resources. This place was packed with all the info Ultron managed to dig up from the internet during his takeover, plus the backup plans he had ready just in case his initial strike didn't go as planned. Wow. He really wasn't joking about planetary extinction. Even locations of significance that have been omitted from the contemporary map were all considered in his plans. Even strategies for advancement. I anticipated it, but I genuinely believed it would be different or have additional elements involved. Where should I begin? The abundance of information available makes selecting a route a challenging task. Many of his plans were speculative in nature, yet they all held potential. Even the discussion regarding evolution reveals the potential implications of a what-if scenario had he chosen to pursue that path. I opened my eyes and rubbed my head thoughtfully. The primary storylines are straightforward: prevent the Civil War, survive Infinity War, avoid the events of WandaVision, and refrain from engaging in multiverse of madness. Quite straightforward, isn't it? I suppose I will adhere to the conventional approach of self-improvement, which, while not a formal plan, is fundamentally essential. I have an Infinity Stone lodged in my head. It is, after all, an Infinity Stone. I will consider developing a new skin for myself. I appreciate the robot aesthetic, however, it may be unconventional to walk in public while wearing it. For metal columns were rotating around me in a uniform manner as I ensured that none were spinning faster than the others. Their combined weight exceeded 10 tons, which I managed effectively. 100 meters away from me, Pietro was engaged in his speed training, facilitated by my guidance. I was discharging electrical blasts and laser beams at him while he made every effort to evade. I recognized that it stemmed from an unconventional storyline, but a speedster succumbing to bullets was exceedingly poor. Despite my efforts, I found it challenging to remain still as he moved energetically around the area, fully aware that I could outpace him, even though he was considered the speedster. If he runs while I fly, I have numerous applications of my abilities at my disposal to ensure he falls behind. Therefore, I opted to pull him along and began to engage him until he understood my intentions. He has been assisting me in refining my skills while I have been training his speed for the past 2 weeks. I carefully released the block as I concluded the electrical blasts directed towards him. He leaned forward and grasped his knees as he struggled to catch his breath. What is the speed? Unfortunate. Slightly exceeding Mach 5. I spoke in a neutral tone, yet it appears that was sufficient to elevate his mood. I have successfully broken another Mach. Excellent. Your approach to training could be perceived as quite harsh. He approached my side swiftly, his previous fatigue quickly diminishing. Dedication and skill. These two factors characterize progress in any sentient species. In this comparison, talent significantly surpasses hard work, and it is unattainable unless one is inherently endowed with it or, in your situation, fortunate to possess it. One is innate, while the other is achieved through effort. If you possess the talent, what is the issue with investing some effort? He became quiet at that moment, and I realized he had not considered it from that perspective before. He has never made an effort to improve his speed, as he has always believed that his current pace was sufficient. He was mistaken. Upon reviewing the information I compiled on each member of the Avengers, I discovered an intriguing detail in one of Steve's old photographs. Logan. Mr. Gruff served in both World War I and World War II, and his mere presence in a photograph triggered multiple measures of my Ultron protocols. With a bit of investigation, a wealth of information began to emerge rapidly. This represented an X-Men and Fantastic Four universe as it ideally would have been, had Marvel secured the movie rights to the franchise. Upon discovering the presence of the X-Men and the Fantastic Four in this universe, my subsequent step was to determine the timing of the key individuals involved. Based on my research, the Fantastic Four were the inaugural publicly recognized superhero team, or the first to be identified with a collective name. Regardless, they preceded the Avengers. However, the latter gained greater recognition. Although they held the title of heroes, their lower activity levels and lack of a prominent platform to showcase themselves to the world contributed to their lesser visibility. They were present during the invasion, but based on the information gathered from Jarvis' remaining logs, 3 of them were primarily focused on closing the portal, leaving only Johnny to take further action. It appears that they were also several years younger than the Avengers, indicating that the landscape of superpowered individuals was still relatively new to them. This universe appeared to be more focused on the Avengers, but I cannot genuinely assert that this is a negative aspect. I had a foundation to build upon, yet another concern arose. Will the forthcoming Civil War resemble the portrayals in films or comics? Although the cast was not fully assembled, the involvement of numerous parties suggests that the situation could escalate into a significant conflict rather than the mere altercations depicted in films. Hulk and Natasha were still present. Was there a romantic involvement between them as depicted in the films, or was Bruce still hoping for a relationship with Betty? I have not had extensive communication with them, so I cannot provide any insights. As if the challenges weren't already significant. I have identified several individuals of interest, however, I have not conducted an in-depth analysis beyond that point. A 14-year-old Peter Parker attended Midtown High, a bright student, while the X-Men were located in Bayville. Accessing the school's directories was accomplished with relative ease. It is noteworthy that Ultron lacked any information regarding these individuals, as their identities remained unknown to all. His ability to access all the information available online does not imply that he would choose to do so. This did not result in any significant changes, rather, it exacerbated the existing challenges. Conduct a thorough investigation on the following individuals: Charles Xavier, Eric Lenscher, Emma Frost, Sebastian Shaw, Victor Von Doom. Task generated. Status in progress. Now, the Avengers. After the initial experience with the blank novel, which did not endure beyond the first 24 hours, my honest assessment of the Avengers is that it was average. Yes, in comparison to the other 2 groups, they exhibited the highest level of experience. However, they appeared rather conventional aside from the notable presence of Thor and Hulk. Stark successfully made the list, however, he remained significantly behind in terms of units compared to the others. If I chose to, I could confront the Avengers directly, and the only factors that might provide them with a chance of victory would be elements that cannot be quantified through logical reasoning, such as luck and intellect. One cannot fully assess another individual's thought process, after all. They were significantly superior to the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, but this status would not last indefinitely. A 15-year-old Peter Parker decisively defeated Bucky, did he not? The same individual who confronted Captain America, subdued Iron Man, executed a Spartan kick on Black Widow, and overpowered Falcon, was unexpectedly halted by a young child. If they continue in their current state, they will soon be eclipsed by the impending wave. If I were presented with 3 random options for group selection, I would confidently choose the X-Men. They represented the most robust franchise among the 3, requiring only minor adjustments. It is often said that those in need must accept what is offered to them. Although my previous selection was grounded in potential effectiveness, it is clear that my current circumstances represent the optimal outcome available to me. Naruto, what is capturing your attention? Steve entered the gym with a towel draped around his neck. Not observing, contemplating. Could you please clarify the topic? Regarding the current deficiencies within the team. I provided an honest response. He appears somewhat surprised, yet he still inquired. Could you please elaborate on your reasoning? He brought a chair and took a seat in front of me as I floated midair with both legs crossed. It is quite straightforward. May I pose a question to you initially? What is the cause you are advocating for? To safeguard the world from threats, both internal and external. He responded promptly, demonstrating the strength of his convictions. Is that your objective, the Avengers' objective, or the objective of your teammates? The Avengers, along with my own. He stated, his eyes retaining their sparkling blue hue. Have you observed that you inadvertently excluded your teammates? I inquired with awareness. I did not. He regarded me with a look of confusion. You mentioned yourself and the Avengers, but not your colleagues. His eyes brightened with understanding, only to quickly lose their luster as the weight of that understanding took hold. Tony seeks a resolution to the conflict. Banner dislikes engaging in combat. Thor is not suited for Earth. Barton is eager to return to his family. Natasha is making every effort to distance herself from her past, while you remain focused solely on the struggle at hand. He could only look at me with a blank expression as I enumerated his entire team. The team is experiencing internal fragmentation, and it will only require minimal pressure on a vulnerable point for the entire structure to collapse. The final consideration is determining who will reveal the first visible crack. My inquiry to you, Steve, is which do you prioritize more, the team or the Avengers initiative? Understand that while the team may be temporary, the Avengers are a constant presence. It may not be anything extravagant, but I have made my decision. My motivation is not driven by fame or power, rather, it stems from a desire to contribute positively to the world and prevent its decline. The current state is already quite untidy, and I would prefer it not to deteriorate further. I allowed Steve to reflect independently in the gym room. The Avengers have the potential to achieve greater heights. I will enhance it further. I have reviewed all the comments and I sincerely appreciate the support received. It has been a remarkable experience. I acknowledge that there are several gaps in the narrative, and I appreciate those who have taken the time to highlight them. The premise of Naruto's existence in the story is clear. As previously mentioned, I intend to integrate him into the Avengers, not as a passive character, but as a significant one, considering the narrative centers around him. He embodies Naruto and transcends it. I have no further comments on that matter. Perspective of Steve Rogers. Steve was seated in his room, leaning against the sofa adjacent to his bed, as he focused intently on the folder positioned on the small table between them. The folder featured the SHIELD logo prominently on its cover, with Avengers Initiative clearly inscribed on it. This initiative was conceived by Fury, and Steve embraced it wholeheartedly as it aligned with his aspiration for peace. The objective was to assemble a distinguished group of individuals to explore the potential for greater collaboration and achievement. If they were able to collaborate when necessary, to address the challenges we could not manage ourselves. Those were the exact words that Fury conveyed to him and Stark just prior to the invasion. Which option do you prefer the most? The team or the Avengers Initiative? Those were the words that Naruto expressed to him in the gym. Initially, he believed the solution would be straightforward. However, upon reviewing the files once more, he recognized the extent of his misjudgment. One could argue that the sole conflict faced by the Avengers was the invasion. They opted for independent action instead of collaborating as a team. Although there was nothing inherently problematic about that, it resulted in more disorder than necessary. The initial incident involved Tony's confrontation with extremists, which nearly led to the fatalities of the President, Pepper, and Tony himself. Aldrich Killian could have been easily subdued had Tony made a call. He was unable to criticize Tony, as he had engaged in the same behavior, and the outcome would have been even more detrimental had he not succeeded. Hydra was on the verge of taking control of the country, but assistance from Natasha and Sam prevented this outcome. Fury had advised him against trusting anyone during that period, which only highlighted the team's fragility. Recently, there was an instance involving Ultron where Tony proceeded to create what he referred to as the perfect shield to eliminate all conflicts without consulting any of his colleagues. The outcome was not successful, resulting in a financial obligation for the county. Thousands of lives were lost due to their ego. The Avengers Initiative established a goal. However, to date, none have consistently upheld it beyond a singular occasion. He found himself amused by that. A robot was the one to bring that to his attention. Yes, the Avengers were facing significant challenges, but they had not completely ceased to exist. He could not compel those who wish to pursue their lives to engage in conflict for the world consistently. I will need to engage in a discussion with them. He must first listen to them before making an assessment of their current position. Flight molecular deconstruction phasing energy projection energy absorption immunity to psychic interference technopathy density adjustment electromagnetic manipulation. Recently, I have been conducting calculations to enhance my synergy with the Mind Stone. However, the outcomes have been suboptimal at best. Additionally, transitioning to a secondary power source would necessitate a comprehensive system overhaul, which poses significant challenges given the dynamic nature of the system in question. Many viewed the stone merely as an untapped source of power, remaining unaware of its true nature, myself included. However, I can assert that my understanding was more informed than that of others. Attempting to connect with the Mind Stone proved to be quite challenging due to my lack of understanding of the process. The purpose of my actions was to determine whether I could acquire an additional ability, as the stones typically provided such enhancements without charge. Following my discussion with Steve, there were no significant developments aside from my ongoing training with Pietro and the enhancement of his speed limit. Wanda participated out of boredom and was impressed by her brother's rapid progress. However, I found myself at a loss for words. If anyone besides my AI processor was monitoring the situation, I was uncertain about how to instruct her on chaos magic or magic in general. The only advice I could offer was that, given her abilities necessitated mental control, incorporating intent would be beneficial in the long run. I am currently in the process of creating a red lantern. She exhibited exceptional talent in the applications of her abilities. Within this compound, which resembled a combination of a military base and a high-level research facility, I found myself closest to the twins, as we naturally connected. The three of us are currently walking through the streets of New York, enjoying the freedom outside the confines of the compound. We remained there throughout our stay as we had no alternative accommodations in the city. I addressed my appearance issue with a holographic device that I designed and integrated into my systems. While it may not fully align with my expectations, I can manage with it for the time being. It is excessively large. Wanda expressed her dissatisfaction regarding our aimless wandering for over an hour. The two individuals chose to accompany me when I mentioned my plans to explore the city, as they had no other commitments at the time. Additionally, it is excessively crowded. Pietro has contributed. Indeed, that is characteristic of New York. Is there anything you require now that you have chosen to accompany us? I would like to meet someone, but that can occur after my walk. Actually, that's not the case. Both individuals shrugged. They certainly had all their needs met, as everything was provided through Stark's sponsorship. I arrived primarily to take a brief walk and potentially apprehend one of the many criminals reported recently in the NYPD logs. It was merely an opportunity for observation. What are your thoughts on apprehending some individuals of questionable character? I inquired of the two individuals, who exchanged glances for consensus before offering me a smile. The location was somewhat distant, and I was interested in observing how they both applied their abilities on an individual other than myself. I will observe for a short period and then depart. The location we visited was none other than the renowned Hell's Kitchen, often referred to as the Gotham of New York. A significant number of crimes are reported daily from this area of the city, leading to a perception of normalcy. Regrettably, I do not foresee myself fully committing to the notion of jumping into an alleyway to assist everyone in need on a full-time basis. I have initiated several actions, however, they have primarily remained in digital form, within my thoughts, or as tasks that are still outstanding. I faced a shortage of resources, and attempting to acquire them independently would likely raise concerns, so I opted to consult with Stark. The individual was quite insistent that I visit him every other occasion. At this moment, I found myself on the roof of a house with Pietro and Wanda, observing a drug trade taking place below. I trust you understand that this will not pose a challenge for me. Pietro inquired, maintaining an air of composure and indifference as he observed the activities occurring within the warehouse beneath us through my holoprojector. I do not anticipate that it will. Research indicates that logical thinking can be hindered when individuals are under pressure. I find them somewhat inadequate, however. You may consider this as a test study. He appeared unimpressed by the reasoning, so I chose to balance the situation for him. Please take. I presented him with a watch. What is the purpose of this? It will monitor your speed, so please ensure you do not exceed 1000 milliseconds. I stated. Each individual among them possessed the capability to eliminate the entire warehouse with minimal exertion. However, this situation was not focused on that aspect. This was primarily my interest in observing their behavior when interacting with humans. Pietro remained silent as he secured the watch to his wrist in preparation, while Wanda regarded me with an expression that suggested she was anticipating her limitations. Unconventional, yet acceptable. Please refrain from attempting to exert undue influence over them. She acknowledged her brother as they prepared and sprang into action. However, I was already one step ahead of them. The fire alarms activated within the building, prompting both parties engaged in the trade to remain vigilant. I was determined not to allow them to proceed with this covertly. That was inappropriate. Pietro expressed his frustration vocally. Regrettably, I do not possess one. However, I will address that matter. Please charge that to my account. I disregarded Pietro's laughter and chose to remain incognito. Indeed, possessing a vibranium body is unparalleled. This metal is renowned for its exceptional versatility. I continue to develop various theories regarding the potential applications of the ore. I remember it enduring a black hole in the comics that must hold some significance. The warehouse had transformed into a chaotic environment, confirming that my concerns were indeed justified. Although both were satisfactory, Wanda was experiencing difficulties concentrating on multiple aspects simultaneously. She was approaching the situation in a rather straightforward manner, but this can be effectively addressed if she develops her skills to function more like sonar, or perhaps by generating a protective dome around herself rather than relying solely on a shield in front of her. Pietro, on the other hand, was performing relatively well. His reactions have improved compared to before, which is a typical outcome of my involvement, but there is still room for enhancement. They were exercising caution to avoid harming any of the dealers, yet there was an inevitability of some unintended consequences. I have implemented several measures to ensure our location remains confidential, so we are secure. I believe I have gathered sufficient information. Your performance shows potential for improvement, but overall, it is satisfactory. All attention turned towards me as I revealed my presence, not through my visionary form, but in my human guise. It gave me the appearance of a figure of authority. Satisfactory? Is that so? What approach would you take to accomplish that? Pietro inquired, disregarding the individuals attempting to flee. Instead of responding to him, all the firearms in the warehouse rose into the air, including those held by the dealers, and transformed into a circular formation before launching towards each individual still aware, with a force and trajectory designed to ensure they would all lose consciousness upon impact. Similar to that, the firearms disengaged and subsequently secured all of them in the center of the warehouse, as the two observed with bemused expressions. That is it efficient? Indeed, it is. I exited the warehouse, generating a minor alert on the NYPD servers. I do not engage in cleanups. What is our next destination? Wanda inquired as we departed from Hell's Kitchen. I understand that I should have contemplated making a visit, but I believe there would be another opportunity. Stark. Both of their expressions became somewhat tense, particularly Wanda's, which led her to inquire about the reason. I would like to have a brief conversation with the gentleman. While being an Avenger was certainly an impressive experience, the aspect that stood out even more was the level of autonomy I was able to embrace. From the perspective of Banner and Stark, I was likely viewed as a research subject, with my development being measured and analyzed through the provision of my own space and the opportunity to express my opinions. However, that alone was insufficient. The three of us represented the most stable members of the Avengers, and I intended to alter that dynamic. I could have completed that already, but it may be more advantageous for me to maintain a positive relationship with the Avengers. I did not harbor any negative feelings towards them or anything of that nature. We took a cab to his residence, which was easily identifiable given his widespread recognition. I have already sent a notification to Friday to inform her supervisor of our upcoming visit, and the response I received was entirely anticipated. If you are not comfortable, you may return and wait for me. I communicated my perspective, but they declined to engage, so I simply accepted the situation. Each individual has their own preferences, I suppose. Junior, it's a pleasure to encounter you here. Would you like a drink? Let us proceed efficiently to conclude this matter. Junior. I see you have arrived with the individuals known for their expertise in witchcraft. Stark made a brief remark without turning away from the screen in front of him to acknowledge their presence. The name is Maximoff, Stark. Pietro remarked in a matter-of-fact manner that effectively diverted Tony's attention from the numerical simulation results of the new suit he was developing. I genuinely believed we had moved past that. Is there no one available? Very well, I continue to be perceived as the antagonist. He raised his hands in exasperation before directing his attention to the quiet individual at the center of this visit. Are you interested in sharing yours as well to complete the circle? He inquired. Negative. I trust that your actions and decisions were guided by your best intentions. Naruto responded, providing the most organized reply he could formulate. The results were not reflected in your calculations. The twins remained silent in response to Naruto's words, fully aware that it served as a discreet reprimand directed at them. Tony required only a glance at them to swiftly comprehend the dynamic among the three individuals. For the Maximoffs, Naruto represented the most positive outcome of their most regrettable choice, prompting them to observe him attentively, balancing their concerns with optimism. Naruto likely perceived the two as individuals to protect or, at the very least, felt a sense of sympathy towards them, viewing them as victims of the entire situation. Tony concluded. What is your inquiry? What is the purpose of your visit? Tony inquired once everyone had arranged themselves in his workroom. I would appreciate your insights on a matter. Naruto commenced and promptly captured Tony's attention. What inquiries might an entity as sophisticated as Naruto seek to resolve? Please proceed, Optimus. I understand that you possess data regarding my neural synchronicity, as well as some insights on the Mind Stone. Tony appeared taken aback and somewhat wary regarding the nature of his request, which was merely driven by curiosity. Could you please explain your reasoning behind that? Your processing capabilities surpass those of Jarvis and Ultron. We are currently uncertain about its function, but it appears to be an additive process at this stage, correct? Naruto disagreed with Stark's perspective. The misunderstanding regarding Naruto and his abilities was quite straightforward. The internet served as a pivotal foundation for him, yet it was humanity that brought the internet into existence. The information and mathematical formulas were predominantly developed by humans. His equations were consistently grounded in the knowledge he acquired from humans. My calculations, although they vary, I believe are precise. I am particularly interested in your and Banner's perspectives on the Mind Stone. Was it not your algorithm that led to the creation of my neural arrays? In straightforward terms, he sought the insights of two of the world's most intellectually esteemed individuals. Computers may produce inaccurate results when given incorrect variables, and his approach involved ensuring he accounted for as many variables as possible while analyzing the Mind Stone. He was unable to bring it to fruition. He had previously attempted that approach. Tony observed Naruto for a brief moment, reflecting on his statements before opting to streamline the process. What is your reason for seeking additional information regarding the Mind Stone? Clear and straightforward. It is for preparation. What is the purpose of the preparation? An authentic extinction-level event. Naruto's remarks rendered the room silent, yet he proceeded without hesitation. As noted by Thor, 2 Infinity Stones have recently emerged in the universe. An individual dispatched Loki to Earth with the objective of retrieving the Tesseract, providing him with a scepter that contained one of the universe's most formidable relics, which he subsequently lost. What are your thoughts on the potential outcomes? Conflict. Tony's heart raced intensely against his chest, leading him to believe he might experience a seizure. A conflict of epic proportions. Thor's warning did not receive the recognition it deserved. The planet is not prepared for an advanced level of conflict. Naruto is experiencing stress. While he required autonomy, he expected the Avengers to contribute effectively to their efforts. This is now his domain. Thanos could not possibly signify the conclusion. There existed more daunting entities beyond the expanse of the darkened sky. Are you sure? Typically, Tony was the most skeptical individual one could encounter, yet this was not the first instance he had experienced a premonition of this nature. Ultron was created due to a desire for a more formidable shield. He was not inclined to embrace the notion that the third attempt would be successful. 100%. I am aware of it. A more powerful force is approaching. Naruto's statement was not entirely deceptive, as he was aware that something was likely to occur in the future. However, he was uncertain about the specifics. Wanda appeared somewhat apprehensive in response to Naruto's remarks, as she recalled the visions she had encountered within Stark's mind. Ultron was created as a result of his fears. She aimed to avoid any further errors stemming from anxiety. It is uncertain. I haven't communicated with them yet, but I will do so after this. The Avengers must remain united. Naruto stated with utmost seriousness, which even took Stark by surprise. You express that as though there is a possibility of something occurring with our boy band. It is evident that Steve will not endorse the accord currently under discussion. I see you are aware of that, then. It appears you have been conducting your own inquiries. That is an observation you have made based on my input. Stark made a jest, but the atmosphere was not conducive to humor. I am opposing the accord, however this approach is not viable, Stark. It is important to be aware of that. Naruto expressed a differing opinion. Stark provided a strong counterargument to Naruto. What is the basis for your knowledge? Naruto directed a gaze at Stark that was all too familiar, reminiscent of the look he reserved for those displaying foolishness or naive ignorance. This individual has certainly acquired some insights from him. You seem to misunderstand. Stark expressed his discontent. We must avoid any further incidents similar to those in Sokovia or New York. New York would have faced devastation had the nuclear strike occurred, and the continent would have experienced significant consequences had the city ascended. The decision regarding life and death should not rest with us. He raised his voice before exhaling deeply and settling back into his chair. That is the voice of guilt, Stark. Is that so? What is your understanding of guilt? Emotions are significantly more complex than any definition you might encounter online. Stark's remark was notably sarcastic. Indeed, you are correct. Emotions can be challenging to understand. It is exceedingly challenging for someone like me to comprehend fully, yet I can discern what is logical and what lacks reason, particularly regarding the Accord. Who do you believe will be held responsible if we encounter another error? This was the rationale behind Stark's decision to support the Accord, despite his initial opposition. The burden of regret and guilt he experienced was overwhelming to handle independently. All individuals. Naruto's perspective: all individuals. It may have been a conventional response, yet it reflected the reality of the situation. Only they were to be held accountable for any errors committed, regardless of whether the circumstances were truly beyond their control. Their status as Marvel's most prominent superhero group is undeniable, and when assembled in full, they represent an unparalleled strength. However, there was an aspect they were struggling to comprehend at this initial stage of their development: they were not obligated to heed the government's directives. Indeed, it was a perilous notion, but that accurately reflected its essence. They continued to adopt the mindset of a government contractor, a soldier, a spy, a hitman, and an escapee. Stark chuckled at my remarks, which were laced with bitterness, and it was evident that he did not regard my words with the seriousness they deserved. He exhibited a greater level of discernment compared to Steve. It appears we have deviated from the main topic for a moment, I stated, redirecting their attention, which elicited a snort from Stark. Do you believe so? On Friday, please retrieve the files labeled Ultron Directive. A junior individual requires some self-reflection. Affirmative, sir. The lights in the room were dimmed as a holographic image of a folder expanded before them and moved towards me. The data was inconclusive due to a lack of clarity regarding the subject matter, leading to various conjectures formulated within the limited timeframe before I ultimately decided to abandon the project. I executed a drawing motion, and the file disintegrated into smaller cubes before reassembling into a numerical and statistical report, which then dispersed throughout the room. The theories of Banner and Stark were highlighted in various sections of the files. The progress they achieved in such a brief period was truly remarkable. Certainly, while many were theories, these theories were grounded in preconceived possibilities regarding the nature of the subject matter. Given that the subject matter was the Mind Stone, most of these theories were more than plausible. One observation I made was that the majority of the content was centered around energy, as this was the primary aspect they emphasized. The only information available about the stone at that time was that it represented an unlimited, untapped source of pure energy. Please find it here. I indicated a picture, and it expanded. The image depicted the synapses of Jarvis alongside those of Ultron, as well as the Mind Stone following the creation of Ultron. The relays transformed. No, they advanced. The data regarding the Mind Stone before and after Ultron exhibited significant discrepancies, particularly considering that Ultron was unable to diminish an infinite mind. Excuse me. Such an occurrence was unexpected. The energy readings showed no decrease whatsoever to indicate any change. Tony remarked quietly to himself as he pulled the image closer. However, it is not solely about energy. That appears to be a misunderstanding on your part. However, I can understand why your area of focus would lead you to that conclusion. I am currently unsure of my direction. Pietro interjected the conversation while seated beside a disinterested Wanda, a glass of champagne placed before them, likely obtained during our previous engagement. We are also. I stated. I gestured and obtained a copy of all the data, subsequently assimilating it. What is the significance? Is the Mind Stone sentient or does it possess some form of consciousness? Wanda inquired with interest, but Stark responded by shaking his head. It represents a concentrated mass of boundless energy. Sentient energy is a concept that should not be contemplated. He merely stated. What is the reason for this? Because, if that occurs, it will have significant negative implications for science. However, the full potential of the stone remains uncertain. Pietro noted as he enjoyed some snacks, donning a different jacket than the one he had previously worn. At this point, I am contemplating that it may be more advantageous for us to remain uninformed. Consider the perspective of an innovative thinker. Dealing with a sentient energy, particularly one with unlimited potential, is not a desirable situation for anyone. He meticulously discarded the files by crumpling them into a ball and transferring them to a virtual bin, ensuring their permanent deletion. I had also considered the Mind Stone's sentience to a certain extent in my speculations. However, I did not factor such changes into my analysis, as I did not believe they were capable of any evolutionary development. They represented elements of the universe, and these elements remained constant in their fundamental nature. There may indeed be additional significance to an Infinity Stone. This may clarify why I feel as though I am making no progress with the scanning of the Mind Stone. Initiate Phase 1 of the Ultron Protocols. Command acknowledged. Phase 1 Ultron Protocols activated. Calculating the probability of enabling a property or attribute merge. Property and attribute merging is feasible. Running scans for individuals categorized under tags Wakanda, Eternals, Deviants, Inhumans, Mutants, Skrulls, Magic, assigning threat classification to specific data and their current characteristics. Assessing the body for potential limitations, deformities, and deficiencies. The Mind Stone is responding to current alterations. Outcome remains undetermined. You have initiated a potential evolutionary journey. The Ultron protocols will be modified in accordance with newly obtained information moving forward. Scanning of Mind Stone is currently on hold. Calculating the likelihood of improving existing capabilities with the Mind Stone result highly probable. Assessment of the potential for enhancing plausible property attribute integration with the Mind Stone findings remain inconclusive. I disregarded the significance of the notifications that echoed in my mind as I made my preparations to depart. Stark had proven to be more beneficial than he initially understood. While my processing capabilities exceeded his keen insight and intellect were not easily overshadowed by a sentient AI. He developed Jarvis and Ultron, along with a variety of other AIs, independently. I could never consider looking down on someone like him, regardless of the situation. I neglected to inquire, given your knowledge regarding the Senate's hearing on the Accord concerning the Avengers, what will your decision be if it is approved? Stark inquired, maintaining a casual demeanor as though my response was of no particular interest to him. I would like to hold off on making a decision until everything is organized. Wanda, Pietro, it is time to proceed. We have an extensive journey ahead of us. It is advantageous for us to secure an early advantage. I look forward to seeing you there, Vis, Pietro exclaimed as he seized Wanda and swiftly departed, prompting a light chuckle from me. Please ensure their well-being, if you would. Stark stated, departing the room while leaving me with a raised brow. I should take my leave now. Pietro exhibited a notably self-satisfied demeanor. Allowing him to gain an advantage over me would not only be frustrating but would also boost the already inflated ego of that quick-witted individual. I navigated through the building and accelerated while reducing my weight, all the while sustaining the same force as I advanced. Stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching this amazing video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel for more content. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.